All right, with that, let's move on. It is time for our featured review. And for our featured review, we are reviewing the big release this week. It is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Zach, you are our superhero expert here. And
I am.
yeah. At least you always just review those movies. So you're going to start. Tell us about this movie and what you thought.
All right. Well, I accept the challenge because not only am I the Marvel expert on this podcast, I also was the one that even mentioned it during our most anticipated summer movies. I mean, I would go out on a limb and say probably of the major studio movies, this would have been my number one. Mostly because how much my high schoolers love to talk about it and how many times watching that goddamn trailer was like a great way to, end class with 3 minutes early. Anyway, Spider-Man Across the Across the Spider-Verse this was not directed by Julie Taymor. It was directed by Joaquin Dos Santos, Kemp Powers, and Justin K. Thompson. And it continues where we left off-ish with Into the Spider-Verse, although I don't really remember how that movie ended. But I'm going to assume that it kind of picks up where we left off. Can you believe it's been 5 years since that movie came out? It feels like it came out like 2 years ago or something. But anyway.
Two of those years were COVID, so
that's
does
true.
It really count?
It did come out, I think, late 2018. But anyway, our hero, Miles Morales, voiced by Shameik Moore, is still uncovering some of his powers as Spider-Man. He's still kind of withholding the secret from his parents. He fosters a crush on Gwen, and he is uncovering the latest threat to his world, which is a mysterious villain by the name of Spot, I believe. I'm looking in the credits here, maybe not. I don't know. It was Jason Schwartzman that was the voice of it. Anyway, the kind of the big story behind the making of this movie is worth mentioning because according to IMDb, it is the biggest crew that has ever been assembled for a animated film. Over 1,000 people worked on this movie, and there are 240 characters in it, and it takes place over 6 universes. And that was part of the reason why I was really looking forward to this movie, because it had multiple delays, but it appeared that the reason why it had delays had nothing to do with marketing or any sort of strategy. It was just that the animators needed more time to complete it, which makes sense because when you watch this movie, I mean, it just feels like a overwhelming animation crash course on animation history. Like you see so many different styles, from that inkblot style, the classic Stanley comic Marvel universe, to you see some Japanese anime. You see even a Lego, some stop motion. You see this really kind of amazing, almost Don Hertzfeldt-y drawing style. It's really black and white. It's just, and kind of like the original was. The original, I think, was maybe more unique because the characters were kind of representative of different styles. This movie, I feel like, is a more immersive experience in that Miles and Gwen actually really do enter the multiverse, at least maybe in a more, just a crazy way than the original. Some people have criticized this movie for being the second of a series. When you know that the third installment's going to come out, obviously you're not going to have a lot of resolution in this story. So how do you rate this movie? And while I do agree that a more rounded ending would have been maybe preferable, I think this movie was fantastic. I think for bang for your buck, in terms of what you're getting, and this movie is 2 hours and 16 minutes, it delivers. I mean, it is worth every cent that you're going to spend on a ticket because it's an incredible just visual tapestry. I thought the story was really engaging. I thought the performances were great. It just is an overwhelming sensory experience. And the story is the story. It's great, but just watching it in a theater, I actually, in the theater I was at, I think more of the adults were entertained than the kids, because this is a movie that, again, it has a somewhat sophisticated storyline, for one thing. It's probably not for that kind of Pixar demographic, but it's just probably, I would say, on par with like Who's Afraid of Roger Rabbit in terms of just, and you can maybe combine the first movie too, and just being so totally innovative in how it's redefining animation. With 2D and some 3D, and then you see some rotoscoping, and you see animation on 2s and 3s, and you see all sorts of different techniques. I've watched a lot of movies or videos on YouTube about the makings of these movies, and it's just really cool how they're reinventing it using really classical handmade styles. This to me is like the pinnacle of how you can combine multiverses and immersive storytelling and superheroes in a package that is totally wonderful. I'm giving it 3.5 stars. I guess I would give it 4 if it was sort of more of a standalone movie, and it probably is 10 minutes too long, but it was absolutely, it delivered everything that I could have expected from an animated sequel to a superhero movie.
I like that you called it Who's Afraid of Roger Rabbit.
Is that what I said?
Yeah.
It is. If he didn't say it, I was going to.
It was the drunk version of Roger Rabbit. One with Liz Taylor and Richard Burton getting sloshed.
All right, Todd, go next.
Okay, well, first, when I was going to the movie, the ticket taker said, Theater 1, on your left, there is no post-credit scene. And I was like, thank you. I almost tipped him. I was like, that was the coolest ticket taker ever. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, I was a fan of the original movie. It was in my top 35 of 2018. This one is definitely less good. It starts out agonizingly slow. Like, the actors are clearly bored, like really bored, especially Haley Steinfeld. And there's just too much Disney and multiverse garbage. Like, in a way, it gets kind of repetitive. Like, I'm sure when this was developed, it was kind of like still new and stuff. But we've seen this all before, and it's stale. Like, the original was unique and like just endlessly cool, and this one is kind of ordinary and lame. And like, honestly, the audience was not feeling it either. They were dead silent the whole time. Like, the gags didn't play all that well. The nonchalance of the action didn't click. The sarcasm didn't land. It was just sort of like a dead atmosphere to watch it in. The animation is terrific, though. I mean, in some ways, the visuals are even better than the first one, which makes sense because you got a Pixar guy like Kent Powers, like helping out a couple of guys making their first movie. Polka Dot Man is pretty cool, just like he was in Suicide Squad, but he's still a strange villain, as it's not his name, but he basically was the same character. I want to know where Nicolas Cage was. Like, the Spider Noir was the best part of the first one, and you only see him for like a split second. Like, hopefully he is in the second one. This has to be the longest animated movie ever. Definitely the longest American animated movie ever. It's I mean, and it does feel every bit of it. It's like a video game mixed with like the Lego movie spin-offs kind of. And in the end, there's like a little bit of the one in there without any resolution, but it's sort of like Fast X in that way, but it's not endearing the way Fast X was that way by not having an ending. It was like we watched half of a 5-hour movie. It's like a kind of shorter MCU movie. I thought about Quantumania a lot when watching this. I'll be generous and give it 2.5 stars just because like the animation is so beautiful.
All right, so 3.5, almost 4 from Zach, 2.5 from Todd. I'm in complete agreement with one of you, and that is Zach. I thought this movie was outstanding. I think it is right on par with the first one. Did either of you watch the first one again, getting ready for this?
Oh, not getting ready, no. But I've seen it multiple times.
Okay, I've only seen the first one once, and that was when it was in theaters. No, I love this movie, but like you said, the story I thought was super engaging. There were moments of like where it was a little slower, but it was character development stuff. The animation just takes your breath away. I had a theater full of people that forgot that this was a part 1, and so when the ending came, it was what? So that was pretty funny. The amount of recognizable voices and faces that pop up throughout this was pretty amazing. My favorite was Daniel Kaluuya as Spider-Punk. I thought, and just the style that they animated him with was so cool. That one was really neat. But it was so much fun and so interesting, and it's so original, and yeah, it's doing the same thing the first one did, but no one else does anything close to it. And so it was like starting to watch it. It just gave you that breath of fresh air that the first one gave all over again. And I felt like the story fit perfectly in what I've been telling. And yeah, it's a trilogy, but this kind of felt like the Empire Strikes Back one. Like you kind of leave with that cliffhanger ending of something's about to happen, but we got to step away for a little while. And That's kind of how I felt at the end of this. Yeah, 3.5 stars. I gave the first one 3.5. This one's getting 3.5. It was a very, very entertaining watch.
Yeah, I mean, you could make, I think we're all saying it is a little bit long. I guess my criticism of the length is that knowing that I think I kind of figured that it was going to be a to be continued at the end. So when you make it that long at the end, it just kind of, it almost feels, it gets in uncomfortable territory to almost feeling like the last 15 minutes are just a big promo for the third installment. But you could turn off your brain and you can turn off your ears when you watch this movie, because it's just visually so amazing to watch. And it's animation that we don't see often anymore because a lot of it is hand drawn and it's not this stock 3D bullshit. It looks, every single frame looks like it was made with care. And in the first movie, they talked a lot about how you could pause the movie. Their goal as animators was you could pause the movie at any time and it would look like a still frame from one of the comics. And I suspect you could do the exact same thing with this movie. In this movie, it does some crazy stuff with some really fast, really almost glitchy stuff that you need to really be able to almost pause your movie and be able to see all the detail in it. And not just in terms of the movement, but also the backgrounds that are just really beautiful to look at. It's almost like it's not even worth talking about the story because the story is sort of secondary to it, at least in my experience of it. But I actually thought, for what it's worth, it was a good story. I disagree with you about Haley Steinfeld. I thought I liked how this movie leaned more into Gwen's character and sort of understanding her difficult. She has some difficult decisions to make, and she has loyalties that are being kind of tested in the movie. And
she was good. Like, she was awful the whole movie. She was so bored. Like, you could tell, like, she was monotone. Every actor was just like, okay,
but she's
we're doing this movie for visuals, not for like people giving a good performance, because none of them are good.
None of the performances are good. Come on.
Not really. Haley Steinfeld was awful though, and she was the first 20 minutes of the movie, and she was terrible. Like, I was like, does she know that she's actually being recorded?
I disagree, Gary. I disagree.
You would even say, because Terry's right, Daniel Kaluuya, who I did not recognize until the end credits, and that was a great Daniel Kaluuya performance. And yeah, I don't know, you're crazy, man. This
is ridiculous. I'm the only one giving this thumbs down.
You are. This movie's got like 95% on Rotten Tomatoes. Everyone loves it.
Yeah, because it's a Spider-Man movie. Like, all the Spider-Man movies get thumbs up from every critic because they're ridiculous. This is just the same multiverse bullshit we get every other movie, and it's not as interesting as the first one. The first one was cool. This one was just kind of, it was boring. It was like watching a painting.
You know what I think was a little bit different about this one was, and it was like watching painting for me. I feel like, okay, you brought out Spider-Pig and Spider-Noir and all that, and that was funny and I liked it, but those to me almost felt like gimmicks. This movie felt like the energy that was encapsulated in those characters was expanded into backgrounds and scenes and moving objects. And that to me was just really amazing to watch. But I know I'm repeating myself. Who cares about the story? Who cares about the acting? The visuals are probably some of the best you will ever see in any non-Miyazaki movie ever.
Yeah, the story's not worth talking about. The acting's not worth talking about. Just the visuals. 3.5 stars. Yeah, okay, good job.
Well, I
think the story is worth talking about. I think it's a fascinating story. I think I disagree completely. I think Haley Steinfeld does great in the story with Gwen is really interesting. And starting out with her and starting with her backstory, and then getting into how this whole multiverse plays together. I thought that was really, really interesting. And where Miles fits into the whole thing. I don't know. I was intrigued for sure.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say the story isn't worth talking about, because I agree. I actually like the story more in this one than the last one. But I would just say that even if you're not a fan of the story, and I think you would even admit this, Todd, it's just an awesome experience to be at, to see something and to see not only animation, but again, an idea of this concept of Miles Morales as a character, so unlike anything we've seen in other comic movies and other animated movies. It's just so original. And, I think all the adults in the theater certainly liked it. I think the kids went a little bit over their heads. So you probably got to be about 8 years old to really get this movie, I think.
Okay, so the one complaint I have about this is why can't Spider-Man movies come up with titles that don't all sound the same? Because now this franchise, the 3 films are Across the Spider-Verse, Into the Spider-Verse, and Beyond the Spider-Verse. We just came off of Tom Holland's Spider-Man, which was Homecoming, Far From Home, No Way Home, Spider-Man Home Alone. I mean, I don't why can't we have titles that actually, help you distinguish which one's which? Speaking of the Tom Holland ones, Donald Glover, is that the character that popped up for like a minute or two in the Tom Holland one?
That's what he's listed as in the credits.
That's what he's listed as. So he's supposed to be. Was it the
It says MCU Aaron Davis.
Yeah. So he's supposed to be that guy. Interesting. Okay. It had to be. I liked all the random little snippets from the past Spider-Man movies that popped up. The little bit of nostalgia without having Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire actually show up.
Mm-hmm.
No, I thought it all worked really well.
Which you liked way more than I did, Todd. I remember you were a big fan of No Way Home. I think you were too, Terry. And like that movie, it just felt like fan service, the whole thing. And this movie felt fresh and original because it was a different character and different storyline. And
that we've seen before.
Absolutely. When have we seen Miles Morales before? He's a character. He's a new. Well, I'm saying he's a new character. I'm tired of getting the third Spider-Man getting rebranded. Like Miles Morales, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm fascinated. I'm on board. Peter Parker, I've seen too much, man. I'm off. I'm selling that stock.
Yeah, there's only like 20 Peter Parkers in this movie.
Well, they're side characters. They're not quite as important. I really like
Jake Johnson does voice a pretty mean Peter Parker, though.
That's true. Yeah. I think, I don't know. I'd love to do a deep dive of this movie and rank our top 10 favorite Spider-Man. Because there are some really, really outstanding ones. I really like the horse quite a bit in this one. And I really just all of them. They're all great. Think of the imagination and creativity that had to go into designing each of those Spider-Man, even the ones that are really, really in the background. It's like, where's Waldo? It's amazing to watch. And it doesn't lean too much into the internet bullshit.
Did you recognize Oscar Isaac's voice? I had no idea it was him until the end.
Yeah.
I did not recognize it. I'm not good at picking out voice. I didn't even know it was Haley Steinfeld until the end of the movie.
All right. Well, 3.5 stars from Zach.
Let's get into the libraries. Let public decide and see what they think of Todd's review.
Yeah, I think that's what's happening right now. 2.5 stars from Todd.
Well, everyone I saw it didn't like it either. Dead silent the whole time.
Well, there were a few good moments in there. There were a few good moments. Anyways, 3.5 stars from Zach and I. 2.5 stars from Todd. That's Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Like I have to look up exactly which Spider-Verse. See the title. It's the worst part of it. Anyways.